In T-minus 3, 2, 1, we begin the fun. Touring our way through the NBA from that big apple to the place by the bay. Is your mind buckled in? Because it's time to begin. Sekou and his friends are doing it again. The Hang Time Podcast is the spot, so sit back, relax, because the show's about to drop.
Welcome into the Hang Time Podcast. Sekou Smith, your host here in Atlanta. And no reason in delaying the festivities this week. My main man, John Schuhmann, is on as well. Shoe trade deadline, another busy one. We had all kinds of activity last season at the deadline, and again, we double back with even more this time around. Who are the teams just right off the top who did things that made you sit back and say, all right, this changes the game. This is a potential game changer move here.
That's a good question, because I don't think anything like overwhelmed me and made me think, okay, this changes the title picture at all. Miami in the East obviously didn't go all in completely because they didn't get the sort of the Danilo Gallinari half of their trade done, but they obviously went in on trying to win more this year with trading for both Andre Iguodala and Jay Crowder from Memphis. And I'm be fascinated to see how that works out. Those are two guys that obviously improve their defense. Their defense has been a little disappointing. They're not in the top 10, which is surprising for a Heat team, which has been consistently in the top 10 since the day the Miami Heat were born. And so I think they help on that end. I'll be curious to see how it works out offensively, because these are two guys who do not shoot the ball well. Like on catch and shoot threes, I was looking that up today. They're both around like 33% over the last few years. And Miami ranks second right now in catch and shoot 3-point percentage, right around 40%. And so if those guys take minutes away from guys like Duncan Robinson and Tyler Hero, then I think the offense might take a step back. I still think Iguodala is a sort of a positive on the offensive end on a team like Golden State, where his IQ plays a role because the ball moves so much and he's just a brilliant passer. But Miami ranks in the bottom 10 in both ball and player movement, so he's not an ideal fit necessarily on that end of the floor with the Heat. But, I mean, obviously a veteran who is going to defend, both of those guys are guys that they can stick in front of Giannis Antetokounmpo, Ben Simmons, Pascal Siakam in the Eastern Conference, and will do a little bit better job than the guys they had in that regard, and allow Jimmy Butler to play the passing lanes, which is what he does best defensively. I mean, I don't know if there's anybody in the league that plays passing lanes better than Jimmy Butler. And if he doesn't have to sort of take the one-on-one assignment against the opponent's best players in the playoffs, that will free him up a little bit more, I think.
I love the Crowder, piece as well, Shu. And to me, this is the Heat kind of recognizing, all right, we made a surprising step up this season with Jimmy and some of these young guys coming along. We need to strike while it's hot, and we don't always see that at the deadline. We don't see teams tinker or tweak at the deadline if they think things are going well. You look at the top three teams in the East, they didn't do anything. The other top teams in the Eastern Conference did not dive in at all, which I was surprised that Danny Ainge did nothing. I thought, might try and find a big man, might try and, do a little something. What does it say to you that Miami is going all in right now when the other teams maybe feel a little more comfortable or a little more hesitant to do something?
Well, I mean, I think first of all, the market is was a little bit different this year than it was last year when Toronto made a trade, when Milwaukee made a trade, when Philadelphia made a big trade, obviously, to get Tobias Harris. So that's part of it. Miami, they're in fourth place, but they've got the best record in games between those top six teams in the Eastern Conference. So they've had some success against these other good teams. Their record is somewhat inflated because they've been really good. Like they 8-0 in overtime games or something like that, which is, a little bit lucky. Let's be honest. but I think it's there. I mean, the East is open. I think, as dominant as Milwaukee has been, I think we all, nobody is going to believe. No, I don't know if to say nobody, but it's more difficult to believe in them, given their sort of playoff failure at the end of last season, losing 4 straight, and knowing that they do have a vulnerability in regard to opponent 3-point shooting. So hey, I like it. It's it makes things a little bit, spices things up a little bit in that East. I still think the East will be fun, just in regards to teams 1 through 6 all having sort of the ability to beat each other come playoff time. I think it'll be. I would be shocked if Milwaukee doesn't make the conference finals, but I think after that, who the heck knows is going to happen. Obviously, Philadelphia has to get some things in order.
Yeah, or get some people out of there. Did you think that the Clippers? I mean, being on the NBA TV's trade deadline show, Tom Penn and I were talking, and Steve Smith and Wes Wilcox, Matt Weiner, all of us, we were struck by just how shrewd the Clippers were in the moves they made. They're already everybody's, or a lot of people's pick, to get to the conference finals and potentially get out of the West and win it all. I love the Clippers lineup. I love what they can throw at you. But I didn't think they had to mortgage anything to do it. Like, they still kept it. They preserved their depth, and kept kind of the key components of that roster.
Yeah,
intact.
I mean, I guess they threw in they sent their first-round pick to New York, which maybe gives them a little bit less opportunity to pounce on something come June or July. But yeah, I mean, they're obviously trying to win this year. I don't think we can think of Harkless as just a sort of a throwaway. I think he's a better defender, more active defender than Marcus Morris, although he's smaller and less strong. So Marcus Morris will, give them a little bit more size defensively, which is maybe what you need alongside, Kawhi Leonard and Paul George, just somebody with a little bit more size, maybe who can take the Anthony Davis assignment from time to time in a series against the Lakers. And obviously he's a better offensive player. I mean, he's 5th in the league in 3-point shooting. He's had a remarkable shooting year, and can create a shot for himself late in the clock, in a late clock situation where he, the ball ends up in his hands with 4 or 5 seconds left on the shot clock. He can get to a 1 dribble pull up if he needs to. He's actually hit some big shots down the stretch of close games for the Knicks in the last few weeks, just in ISO situations. So yeah, it's an upgrade offensively. Defensively, I guess it depends on the matchup. Because like I said, Harkless was was I think second on their team behind Kawhi as far as deflections. So he's not. I don't think he's just sort of a throwaway. But yeah, obviously an upgrade. And Lakers have been the better team overall. Clippers are 2-0 head to head. It's going to be fascinating to see what goes on with those teams, and I don't think we should count out, teams like Denver and Utah and even Houston in the Western Conference.
Yeah, we'll talk about Houston in a sec, Shu. The Timberwolves, a team in disarray, I don't even know what to make of how quickly they let go of that rope early this season and things got out of hand. They finally get D'Angelo Russell in the fold. Andrew Wiggins goes to the Warriors. There's been so much chatter about Wiggins when they gave him, when he got that big contract in Minnesota, whether or not he was living up to it or whether or not you felt like he was a guy who could play up to that sort of, that level of compensation. Do you like D'Angelo Russell on the Timberwolves roster? I don't know that it moves me one way or another, but I'm intrigued by what Andrew Wiggins could do potentially with the Warriors next season when they get Steph and Clay back. I really like it for the Warriors. I don't know how I feel about it right now for the Timberwolves.
Let's say that the Timberwolves went from this is not working with Andrew Wiggins to maybe this will work, with D'Angelo Russell. So maybe that's an upgrade, like we knew the Wiggins thing wasn't working out. And then obviously D'Angelo Russell placates Karl Anthony Towns, but that combination right there is not very good defensively. And so I don't necessarily see them improving on that end of the floor unless, guys like Josh Okogie and Jarrett Culver become, two of the best defenders in the league, while also improving their shooting. So, I think it's definitely a wait and see situation with Minnesota. I think it's hilarious though that the biggest headline move came out of the 14th and 15th teams, in the teams in 14th and 15th place in the Western Conference. As far as the Warriors, first of all, let's just say as bad as people think Wiggins' contract is, it's the same time frame as Russell's and $5 additional million so Wiggins after this year is 3 years, $95 million. D'Angelo Russell's is 3 years, $90 million. Russell, I guess, the Warriors decided to punt on the D'Angelo Russell experiment. I was one of those who was not optimistic about him working out long term in Golden State. And it's not just about necessarily they already have Stephen Curry and Klay Thompson. It's more about his fit in just their system and the way he plays. He's more of a ball stopper. He doesn't move much without the ball when he's off. I mean, he can be a brilliant pick and roll player, a great shooter from the perimeter, and a very good passer in pick and roll. But if he's not playing pick and roll with the ball in his hands, then his value diminishes quite a bit offensively, and then that obviously doesn't make him a very good fit in Golden State, where guys, when they give up the ball, keep moving, like a Sean Livingston. Just think of him, just moving around. Curry, even when he gives up the ball, moving around and relocating. And so I don't think he was a good fit. And obviously he was a terrible defender this season and has, the Nets maybe got a little bit better defense out of him last year than he had played in the past, but I don't think he fit. Now, Wiggins, who knows? They got to get him to play some defense. He's an average, he's like a below average catch and shoot guy, which obviously matters in that system. Around 36% on catch and shoot over the last few years. They got to get him to defend. They have to. I mean, it's there. I mean, he's got the size, the length, the athleticism to be a plus defender. It's just never showed up, and that's a focus thing. It's so it'll be fascinating to see. They've got a few months to sort of integrate him or a couple months to integrate him into their system and start changing his habits before it really matters. So I guess that's a good thing. I guess the question is with Golden State was, they were going to need a wing, right? Like they have Steph and Klay and Draymond Green and Looney, who I think hopefully can get healthy and be a long-term solution at center for as long as they need a center, but they needed wings. And I was a little surprised they gave up Glenn Robinson. I thought he might have been a piece they could have kept in the summer as a sixth or seventh man. I guess Alec Burks has probably played his way out of a contract that they could have afforded. But I was a little surprised they gave up on Robinson. But they needed wing, right? So the question is, was this the best wing they were going to get in a D'Angelo Russell trade? And that's, who knows what the answer to that question is, what wings will be available in the trade market come July or even next year at some point, as if, would there be a better wing they could have got in that sort of same trade structure?
Well, I think about what they could get in the draft too, Shu. I mean, depending on where they land in the draft with an Anthony Edwards type out there, there's some possibilities. It'll be a young guy that they will have to.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like Steph,
You know,
Clay, and Draymond are ready to win right now. The draft is not considered very strong, right? And even with the worst record in the league, they're not guaranteed they're not guaranteed a top 3 pick. So who knows, how that'll work out. Right now, it looks like the Knicks had the worst record in the league last year and missed out on the 2 best players by far of the last couple of years. So we'll see.
I'm trusting the Warriors culture too. Maybe that's a mistake on my part to trust that their culture would be able to take a guy like Wiggins and get the best out of him. I'm looking at him and saying to myself, if he's in the Harrison Barnes spot on that roster, because you got to think they went from Harrison Barnes to KD, and now whoever you have now has to slide back into that same spot. We know it's not going to be a player of Kevin Durant's caliber. So it has to be somebody that's a complementary fit at that spot as opposed to being a number 1 or 2 option. And I just felt like Wiggins in that spot, in that system, sounds good to me.
Yeah, on paper it sounds great, right? Like on paper he is a very good complement. It's just on the floor. Is it going to be consistent enough? Is he going to show up in big games? Is he going to fit in defensively where he knows what he's doing in that system, makes the right decisions defensively as far as switches and not switches and help and all that stuff. We'll see. The one thing that scares me a little bit is that the Warriors are not a team that discourages mid-range shots. In previous years, they had Steph, Clay, and KD, 3 guys who have the license to shoot wherever they want, right? Even if you're an analytics-friendly team and Steph takes a mid-range shot, you're like, okay, fine. KD takes a mid-range shot, no worries. Klay Thompson, no worries. But even this year, without those 3 guys, they rank 3rd in the percentage of their shots that are mid-range. So they don't exactly, with these lesser shooters, they don't exactly discourage that kind of stuff. And Wiggins is just a guy who has fallen into the mid-range trap without being nearly as good of a mid-range shooter as those other guys. Like he shoots like 36% or 35%. I think he's 34% this season from mid-range, which is not good. And he cut down on his mid-range a lot this year with Ryan Saunders sort of going to more of an analytics-friendly shot selection. But that's the one thing that scares me a little bit, that he's going to have a little bit too much license to shoot those shots again, and they have not been good for him. He needs to get to the basket, number 1, and he should have the space to do that in the Warriors system. And then catch and shoot threes. That needs to be the bulk of his sort of offensive repertoire, basically.
My only concern, and maybe it's misguided, but I'm worried also about if he had trouble with Jimmy Butler and some of the other players, veterans who came through Minnesota, Draymond's going to chew him up. Draymond will run him over and he's going to have to really brace himself for the culture and go with the Warriors. He's going to have to understand that while Steph might be the face of the franchise, and Draymond is the guy who sets the tone, for them in terms of how they work. And I'm hoping that that's not going to be something that makes Andrew Wiggins retreat.
We'll see. I think Steph could be the good cop in that situation. He's not. It's not like he's not a leader at all, and can't be in Wiggins's ear in addition to Draymond. You know what I mean? Draymond could be the bad cop. Steph can be the good cop in that kind of situation. Keep him moving forward, let's say. But we'll see. I'm fascinated. I said, Minnesota went from this is not working to maybe this will work. I think Golden State went from I don't know if this is going to work to I don't know if this is going to work. But they got a first-round pick out of the deal, I guess, and then maybe that 2021 first-round pick from Minnesota. That's a juicy little trade asset that they can use going forward.
Do Are you ready to buy Hawk stock yet? Do you feel like the Hawks made some low key power moves to put themselves in a better position this season and certainly next?
I really liked John Collins as a role man. Like, I don't think there's anybody that sort of set a screen and then was at the basket quicker than John Collins. Like, he's got to be the quickest sort of pivot and roll guy in the league. So, and obviously a great lob catcher. So I think adding Clint Capella sort of diminishes Collins's value in that role, obviously, because he's going to be playing alongside Capella, and Capella is now the role man because Capella does not shoot outside 5 feet, and Collins does. But Collins isn't a bad 3-point shooter. Like, I think he's about league average. So, and if he takes some of his sort of above the break threes and turns them into quarter threes, then if he's spacing more to the corner than top of the key, then I think maybe his 3-point percentage goes up. I think it'll help them defensively, obviously, where they need more help than even on the offensive end. And you know what? I like the Scal Labissiere little. They basically got him for nothing.
Yes. Yeah, I liked it. Big body.
Yeah. Full disclosure, like I'm a mark for role players. So like I like role players more than I like stars. It's just sort of my thing. Like I like role players that play hard or active guys and play unselfishly, play smart. And so I've liked Labissiere this year when I've watched him. I think he's an active dude, gets on the glass. Still needs some polish to his game, but I like him as a free addition basically to that team. And so we'll see. I think obviously they're playing the long game, but Capella definitely just gives them more of an inside presence, and then they obviously have a ton of young talent on the perimeter that just needs to get better. So I mean, the Hawks, like it's all on their player development system. Can they turn guys like Hunter and Reddish into plus players on both ends of the floor? Like they obviously have to improve defensively as well. So we'll see. I guess I do feel a little bit better about the Hawks than I did a week ago.
Right. And I mean, I know Dwayne Dedman pushes it over the top of you since he's role player. That's the quintessential role player. Too much for the role that he plays, but obviously the Hawks had a ton of flexibility as it was. Mm-hmm.
They limited themselves as far as taking other guys into trades going forward, but who knows what would have been available in that situation come July.
Yeah, the last trade I'll bring up, and it's just I'm still trying to figure out what is going on, is Andre Drummond to the Cavs. Like that's in the division. You make that deal, and you didn't move Kevin Love or Tristan Thompson out if you're Cleveland. I'm trying to figure out how all this is supposed to work.
I'm not sure. I really, I think what's interesting about Drummond is that like all the cap, like a lot of the cap space for this summer has dried up, right? So if he declines that player option and becomes a free agent, where is he getting money from other than if it's the Cavs re-signing him? The Hawks were a team that potentially had cap space, but they just got their center. And so I'll be fascinated to see if he maybe opts in, just knowing that the money isn't going to be there this summer. It's fascinating from a Detroit perspective because they just said, we are done with Andre Drummond, and they took a second-round pick and nothing as far as players are concerned. Apologies to Brandon Knight and John Henson out there, but and Cleveland, I assume they've got to think that there's going to be a Kevin Love trade out there in the summer, maybe. I think it's sort of a similar situation with him in regard to like Mike Conley last year, where we all thought maybe Mike Conley gets traded before the deadline, and it didn't happen. And I remember saying, well, I think he's going to get traded come July, and he certainly did. And so maybe that's a situation where it's just easier to make a trade in the summer for a contract like that than it is in the middle of the season. And so maybe they're moving off of him. Remind me, what's Thompson's? Is Thompson on an expiring contract? I'm looking right now. Yes.
Yeah,
Thompson's
he's done.
on an expiring contract. So I guess he's gone. I assume he's gone.
Yeah.
July 1st. And maybe even, would they work a buyout with him? Does he want a buyout?
I don't know.
Is he willing to, take a pay cut to go find a team that's going to make the playoffs? That would be interesting to see. He could certainly be an interesting buyout candidate, especially for a team like Houston, who, while they're going all in sort of on small ball, they could certainly use a guy like that to help them on the glass when they need it. So we'll see. That's an interesting one going forward. I don't know why the Cavs want Andre Drummond. I think as a long-term solution.
Yeah,
why do you make that trade? You're in last place right now. You're not doing anything this year. Why do you make that trade unless you want him next season? And then the question is, okay, well, why do you want him next season? And maybe they think he can shore up a defense that's been awful. Kevin Love has been awful defensively. Their guards are young and small and not very good defensively. Thompson hasn't been terrific on that end of the floor. So maybe they just want somebody who can be a defensive anchor. Not that Andre Drummond is the best defensive center in the league or anything close to it. Maybe they just see. Obviously he's gonna help you on the glass, on both ends of the floor, and maybe they just wanted some sort of stability down there.
I don't know.
Knowing that they're going to move on from the other two guys.
Yeah, I don't know. The league's in a funny place right now. We know everything's going to change dramatically in the East next year if Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving do what we expect them to do in Brooklyn. Miami has certainly changed whatever the trajectory of their situation, or at least what we thought their situation might be going into this season and beyond. I like the intrigue. Giannis, of course, depending on how deep the Bucks go, can they get to the finals this year? And then Toronto, what happens with their front office? There's just a lot of moving parts in the summer, when we know there won't be the free agent dollars being tossed around that we saw last summer. Everybody kind of loading up for a summer of 21 in free agency. All-Star Weekend is going to be very interesting. I know, we're all getting together in Chicago next week for All-Star. I'm going to be very curious to see what the conversations are like, in hallways and, in quiet places, and not too many quiet places during All-Star Weekend, but just when people are talking hoops and trying to figure out what the heck is going on, because we know who the front runners are right now. Does that change based on what we saw at the deadline and what we might see in June? Because it's not going to change because anything that's done in the draft. There's not a player in the draft that's coming out that's going to be a game changer that affects the landscape of the league. This is all going to have to be done through player movement of guys who are established already in the league and free agency. And I don't have easy answers. Like normally we have some pretty easy answers. I don't know if there are any right now.
I still think Milwaukee in the East is a safe. I think you can you can safely. I think them making the finals is maybe the easiest prediction. I don't know if it's easy, but I don't know if it's more than a 50-50 shot. But I think them making the finals I'm fairly confident that they are just much better than anybody else in the East right now. And can take care of business in a 7-game series this year. The West, I really don't know what to think of just yet because of just how good the Clippers have been head-to-head with the Lakers, and then the upgrades that they made. So we'll see. I'm fascinated. I'm excited about the rest of the season. Even before we get to All-Star, there's actually some pretty good games next week. There's a lot of games between between good teams next week, even before we get to All-Star. So I'm excited about that. And definitely fascinated to see how this plays out. It could be some interesting matchup situations going on in both conferences where we might see some late season gamesmanship just to depending on how matchups might play out in the last 2 weeks of April.
Well, I'm always down for gamesmanship, Shu. Bring your heavy stuff for Chicago. I hear the snow will be falling. It's going to be nice and cold up there. Hey, we got cold weather All-Stars on the calendar for as far as we can see. So it's going to be a Long John's All-Star for the next few years, man. But bring all your goods. Bring the Schuhmann brain. And the first meal is on me when we get to Chicago, since you usually pick up tabs. The first one's on me.
Oh, wow. All right. Nice. I'm looking forward to that. I won't even bring my credit card.
Exactly. You're just rolling with your boy. My main man, John Schuhmann, as always, breaking it down for us here on the Hang Time Podcast. We appreciate you. The next time you hear from us, we will be on the scene live in Chicago, All-Star Weekend, the whole crew. Maybe, I don't know, Shu, maybe I'll get everybody together. You, Sean, Mike Wright, Ashburn, maybe we'll sit down and do a roundtable podcast while we're in Chicago, breaking stuff down from All-Star Weekend.
Sounds good.
All right, man. Appreciate it. We appreciate you. Thanks for listening. We'll catch you right here next time on the Hang Time Podcast.
This one is done, but in case you want another one, here's the links to all the fun from Sekou Smith's Hang Time Run. Check us out on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, NBA.com/hangtime, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Until next time, Hoops fans.